What's up, guys? So we have some sweet glute information coming for you today. I, of course, am Joe Bennett, the hypertrophy coach, and this is Mei Ling, and I will let her introduce herself.
Hi, Mei Ling NG. You may see me on Wonder Woman, Scorpion King, and upcoming Suicide Squad manga. Play a lot of superheroes and warriors and martial artists. So look out for me.
Sweet. And we're going to be taking you guys through some glute stuff. We're going to have Mei Ling demoing, and hopefully you guys can learn some stuff and pick up some tips along the way. And check out both of our channels. Hit some like buttons, some subscribe buttons, share with some friends, and hopefully you guys enjoy the series.
Definitely subscribe to me. I know where you live. I'll come and find you.
She can beat you up. True story.
I will.
All right, guys, so we are back with some thruster demo here, again with Mei Ling. And so basically this one, so first and foremost, I always say, I don't want to pretend I'm very smart. I always get confused which ones are bridge and which ones are thrusters. I generally will program thrusters much more often just because it's more range of motion. And again, depending on how you're doing them, you can really have to the point where your hips are going near the floor and still have your glutes doing most of the work or all of the work. And if you're not really focusing too much on what's initiating, you could potentially have quads start a little bit, but we'll talk about basically how to keep that out. But if you have a hard time keeping your quads out of it, that could be a place for bridges, just a much shorter range of motion. Knees don't move nearly as much, and just training that full hip extension. But really the goal of either one, bridges, thrusters, is just to train the glutes in their fully shortened, fully contracted position. So you guys are gonna get a feel as I keep going through all of these. At the end, I'm gonna kind of wrap up and say what would be a very good, complete glute workout, which again, I consider training the glutes for their full contractile range, a very complete thing. The other merit of this is even though the knees move a little bit, this is really a lot of isolation just at the hips, takes the back out of it a lot, takes the quads out of a lot, where again, even if I'm looking at an RDL variation, all that load has to go through the back, so the back is involved more. If I'm looking at a squat or a leg press variation or a lunge variation, those are all great for glutes, but the knees moving significantly more. So another advantage of this, aside from training the glutes fully shortened or fully contracted, is it does take some other stuff out of the equation, really almost completely isolates the glutes. So the big thing we're looking at here again is Mei Ling's gonna demo a couple different versions. Basically, we just want to make sure that the main thing moving again is we've got your pelvis, we've got your femur, is we want that femur moving in pelvis. We don't have a whole lot going on with the lower back. And there's two main different ways that people will teach or cue these. I personally like to default to keeping your torso or your spine nice and still. So imagine if this is the bench edge here. As you move, you should basically kind of seesaw or pivot on the edge of the bench. That's what's going to happen if you're literally keeping your spine and your torso nice and still the whole time. It's just coming along for the ride with the glutes contracting. Some people like to actually cue where basically your point stays almost the same, and then your spine is essentially, as you go to the bottom, extending a little bit and then rounding a good bit to the top. And so the difference will be, instead of having neutral spine to finish, we'll be having a little bit of a rounded spine to finish, finishing with this kind of pelvis under thing. The advantage of that is some people, when they do these, they just extend their lower back a whole lot. So it just turns into a lower back exercise. If that's you, it can be good to learn to finish with your pelvis under, a little rounding to really help kind of overdo prevention of extension. But if you're really good at just keeping it neutral, that's kind of the default I prefer. But with anyone I work with, if they know how to actually initiate with the glutes, finish with that hard, ugly butt contraction feeling, and keep everything else out of it, whatever method gets that done, I let them do it. So I've had a lot of people do finish with kind of the rounding of the spine, pelvis pulling under, and I've had some people keep a neutral spine. So we'll come around from over here, and we're gonna show, Mei Ling's gonna demo first, keeping a pretty neutral spine. So again, so realize a pretty neutral spine for a lot of people is a little bit of an arch in the lower back. So she's basically gonna keep that same spine position the whole time. And when you do these, when she's at the bottom, she's gonna start with, so from the bottom, glute squeeze first, and then hard glute contraction, ugly butt to the top. And you'll see that she's doing this little seesaw motion on the edge of the bench here. So again, her whole spine is basically just pivoting on that pivot point. I'll have her do one more. So glute squeeze, hard first. Again, that amount of little bit of low back extension is staying the same the whole time. And now we're gonna go and she's gonna demo doing a little bit more of a tucked position. There you go. And actually finishing with, she's a little bit of an extended spine here. Then the spine is rounding to finish, and still a hard glute contraction. And you'll see that her upper back and basically body is not really pivoting on here. It's almost staying in the exact same spot. and her spine is rounding to let her pelvis go down. Spine, is extending and then rounding to the top. So again, either of these you can see if you actually imagine where her hip joint is, where that femur is sitting in the pelvis. That's the main thing occurring with both is, again, that hip extension. But again, there's just a difference with basically what the spine is doing along the way. Great. So mess around with both of those at home. The most important things I would say for either one, when you're in the bottom position, make sure your glutes are tight. Make sure you kind of start the motion with that hard contraction. Sometimes I even say actually contract hard before things move, and then continue to contract harder basically until your hips extend, your pelvis extends. And then from there, whatever you feel better with, again, if you feel better just letting yourself kind of seesaw with a neutral spine on there, great. Or if you feel a little bit better kind of pulling that pelvis under, the most important thing is you're finishing with that hard, ugly butt contraction and not finishing with a hard lower back extension. And again, the same thing, the initiation is important because right from the bottom, your knees are in a little bit more of a flex position. If you really were pushing your feet forward or trying to do something like, again, driving your feet forward on the ground or whatever, your quads could do a little bit more work. But if your focus is on clench and squeeze the glutes first, and then make sure the motion is initiating from there, that's also a great way to keep your quads out of the motion. So that is it. Thrusters. Again, bridges, the same variation, would just be lower back on the ground, shorter range of motion, but still working that end range hip extension. And again, very, very good options to kind of isolate the glutes and also train the glutes in their fully contracted, fully shortened position. If you guys like it, don't forget to like, subscribe, thumbs up, check out my channel, check out her channel. We're going to link it somewhere in here. Travis is going to do it somehow if I point enough places down below. And stay tuned for the next one in the series.